Good evening, everyone. And today we are not going to be using Tanya today. Today's class is going to be a follow-up on the previous classes. We're going to be discussing ideas and issues that stem from what we've spoken about in the past few weeks about in Siman Yud Aleph Iggeres HaKodesh. And Mirz Hashem will wrap up with this period of Siman Yud Aleph, and then we'll move on to Siman Yud Beis.
You're not saying anything inside.
If I do, I apologize in advance.
I can close that.
Yeah. I want to start off with something which is a little off on the side. In this week's Parsha, Parshas Kiseitze, we have the mitzvah of getting married. Ki yikach ish isha uva'allah. And we know that a marriage can be, according to halacha, a marriage can be effected in one of three ways. Kesef, shtar, and bia, right? So from ki yikach we learn kesef, as the Gemara says, kicha misdei Ephraim. From the pasuk, from the words in the pasuk ba'allah, we know that you can be koina also with bia. And then, because the pasuk afterwards says, v'katzav la sefer krisus v'holcha v'hoisa li'ish acher, so we make a hekesh of v'yatza v'hoisa. That whatever, there are different similarities between a get and between marriage, which is ironic in and of itself. And maybe we spoke about that in the past. Maybe one day we'll talk about it. Why this close connection between kiddushin and gerushin. But from there we learn that just like a get, the pasuk says very clearly, "V'kasav la sefer krisus," that a gerushin is affected through a shtar. So the same thing also, kiddushin can be affected with a shtar. Nevertheless, as we all know, for everyone who has been by a chasna before, knows that the minig Yisrael, as the Rambam already notes, the minig Yisrael is that we're mekadesh dafka bekesef, we're mekadesh with a ring, and a ring is kesef. It's made out of zav, it's made out of gold. But the point is, it's kesef, it's kesef, it's shava kesef. It is worth money. We're not mekadesh with a shtar, and we're certainly not mekadesh bebiyah. And perhaps that's also alluded to in the pasuk, in the fact that if you look in the order of the pasuk, ki yikach, the very first word is ki yikach is kiddushei kesef. And only afterwards you have the ba'allah, which is through bia, and the pasuk afterwards you have the hekesh, which is through shtar. Why is it that the minig Yisrael is dafka to be mekadesh bekesef? What is the reason for this minig? So the Rebbe talks about this in the Sikha, and the Rebbe, as you know, the Rebbe was a very big Talmud of the Ragatchover. And the Ragatchover was very into what we would call splitting hairs, or making very, very subtle and differentiations and matters that seem to be coupled together, and dividing them into smaller pieces. The Rebbe actually corresponded heavily with the Ragatchover. Some of those letters are still preserved. And the Rebbe received smicha from the Ragatchover. And there's no question that without, it's not even close, that the Achron who's quoted the most by the Rebbe in Sichos is the Ragatchover.
Who was in Russia?
Shafnas Panech. The Ragatchover, his name was Rabbi Yosef Rosen. He was a Rav in the city of Dvinsk, which I believe is in Latvia. What?
Ar
Sameach was in the same city as him, and right, there are two Rabbanim in the same city. The Ragatchover, who was of Chabad ancestry, he was the Rav of the Chassidim, and the Ar Sameach, he was a Chabad Chassid, the Ragatchover. And the Ar Sameach was the Rav of the non-Chassidim, but they actually got along very well together. And it's kind of amazing that a small little city like that had two such incredible luminaries, not one, even one is rare for a small city like that, or even a big city, but had two such luminaries. But during, I believe it was during World War I, or in the aftermath, the Ragatchover ran away for a while to Leningrad, and that's where the Rebbe met him on many occasions. And as I said, the Rebbe received smicha from him, the Rebbe corresponded with him. But more than all that, the Rebbe, there's no question that the Rebbe's mahalach, the Rebbe's shita in limud, is very, very strongly influenced by the Ragachover. I'm not even sure there's anyone who comes close. And the Rebbe's sichas, the footnotes are references to this form of the Ragachover are all over the place. The Rebbe continuously refers to the Ragachover. And the Ragachover analyzes what we call the institution of marriage, not from a marital therapy perspective, but from a halachic perspective. And the Ragachover found that there are actually two different elements in marriage. One is a positive element and one is a negative element. There's so many good marriage jokes that we can make over here right now. I don't mean negative element as in bad. The positive element is the relationship that when a person makes the kinyan kiddushin, ha'isha niknis lebaila, there's an actual kinyan over here, and there's a special connection, a marital connection, which is forged between this man and this woman. That's the positive element of kiddushin. The negative element of marriage is the idea that at the moment of kiddushin also, the woman has to sever her potential ties with any other person in the world. So that's what I mean when I say negative. It's a certain of it's a breaking away. Precious in the words of the Gemara, the asrla akuli alma kahektish. One of the reasons why kiddushin is called kiddushin is just like hektish is something which is asr for everyone. So when a man marries a woman, at that moment, asrla akuli alma kahektish, she now becomes forbidden to the entire world like hektish. So that she develops a positive relationship with her new husband and suddenly creates a negative relationship with everyone else. And the question becomes, of these two elements, which comes first and which comes second? That's what I meant when I said the Ragachover picks apart things that it seems to be one thing, a package deal. The Ragachover says no. It happens, the Ragachover says no. Actually, that
those two consequences.
Right.
You got positive consequences and negative.
But of those two, apparently one of them conceptually precedes the other and leads into the other. One of them creates the other, and the question is which one creates which?
Why the first two is positive and the get is negative?
I'm not talking about the get. Now we're just talking just on marriage. We left behind get. When a person marries a woman, there's a positive thing, which is, when I say positive, I don't mean good versus bad. Positive, I mean and something which is, I don't know, looking for better words to describe it. There is something on the positive side which is created, which is the relationship between this man and this woman, and on the negative side, meaning something which draws her away
in the world itself.
She's put in different words, she becomes close to this man and distanced from everyone else. And the question is, of these two elements, halachically speaking, which one comes first? Although this might sound like in who knows and who cares, right? But actually, the Ragachover, what he was brilliant at and adept at was finding actual halachic implications to all of his questions. The Mai Nafkamina is a very important question. The Ragachover will always explain what the practical difference in halacha is, whether we say one way, whether we say another. The Rebbe further expands on this idea in a sikha. The Rebbe connects us with another chakira of the Ragachover, which again will sound like splitting hairs. And the idea is, when a person gives a woman the ring, so there's a kinyan over here and there's a kiddushin over here. Which one comes first, the kinyan or the kiddushin? Does the kiddushin cause the kinyan or does the kinyan cause the kiddushin? And once again, the Ragachover goes and he brings halachic implications for whichever way you're going to say it. And the Rebbe connects this also with the fact that there are two different psukim in the Torah from which we learn the din of kiddushin. One is the pasuk in our parsha, Ki yikach ishisha. There's another one, the Gemara Psachim, the Gemara in Kiddushin brings down from the pasuk V'yatza chinam ein kasef, without getting into the nature of that derivation. And depending on where you derive kiddushin from, the question is what will come first is the kinyan, or what will come first is the kiddushin. But all of it comes together under one larger umbrella, which is of the two aspects of marriage, which is number one, connection to the husband. Number two, the distancing from everyone else. Which one comes first? These all interrelate with each other.
How could you have Kiddushin without Kinyan? I don't understand that. How could you have the Kiddushin without the Kinyan? How's that possible? You said there's a tzad that the kedushin would precede the kinyan. How could you have kedushin without a kinyan?
So one of the proofs that Ragachover brings for the idea that the kedushin brings the kinyan and not vice versa is an interesting halacha brought down in the Rishonim. The Mishnah says that if a person throws a get to his wife, and if it ends up, if he's, let's say, 100 feet away from her, if it ends up closer to her, she's megureshes. And the Rishonim extend that also to the kedushin. So if a man throws money to the wife, so if it lands closer to her, it's mikudeshes. The problem with is, how was she going to the money?
Chotzer. I mean, no.
Chotzer? What chotzer?
Where she was? In the street?
She's 100 feet away.
She has to pick it up. Akbar.
So, and the Kiddushin is chal before the Kinyan. And from this, the Ragachover brings a raya that actually, no, in this instance, there is no Kinyan. But because there's a Kiddushin, the Kiddushin causes the Kinyan. It's not, it's really beyond the realm of what
You're making me dizzy.
I'm making your head spin. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
Why is there kedushin?
It's got to be very hard to understand this.
doesn't it have to be within her engaged on Sunday?
Sorry?
Why is there
Frank's
kedushin?
son getting married. So
Okay.
it's good. You're talking about
Yeah.
Kiddush nowadays.
So,
I mean, how did she agree to it? And
Doesn't it have to be in her rishus?
I don't want this. This is not a Gemara share. It's not a Pilpul share. I can give you can look in the Sikha with all the Mekayris over there and the Tzafnas Paneach, the Ragachover. This is all leading to a point which is connected to the Tanya, which is the larger idea again over here is that there are these two elements in Kiddushin. One is the Kiddushin itself, the relationship itself, and one of them is the idea of Asher La Kuli Alma Kehektish. The positive aspect of the marriage, the positive aspect, which is the relationship between the husband and the wife, is symbolized by the idea of kesef. Because kesef is related to the Hebrew word of nichseif nichsafti, which is desire, yearning, longing. So that's why the minig, or one of the reasons why the minig Yisrael is dafka of the three different kinyanim to make that mekadesh dafka with kesef, is because kesef symbolizes this positive relationship which is created right now between the husband and the wife. However, that's only one side of the marriage. Then there's the kiddushin element. It's almost like you have kesef kiddushin. Kesef symbolizes the love. Kiddushin, which the word kiddushin is the asula akuli alma kehektish, right, severing and becomes prohibited to the entire world. So you have these two elements tied together. And again, as we said, the Ragachover will find different areas in halacha where, or different areas in the Gemara and halacha, where the implication is that one comes before the other. So it's a little of both perhaps. But what's relevant over here to us is the idea, which we've spoken about many times, is that everything that happens over here in this world is really a mushal for that which is going on in the higher worlds. Just note the words that I said. I said everything that happens here in the world is a mushal, not the other way around. Most people say, well, we have in the world, then we have a mashal for husband and wife is HaKodesh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. It's the other way around. If there's the real thing and the mashal is somewhat of a loose or watered down duplicate or a watered down replica, so we are the mashal. Everything down here in this world is mishtalshal. Everything that's down here in this world devolves from the way it is in the higher worlds. The fact that there is a husband and wife down over here, the fact that there is idea of kiddushin, the fact that there's the idea of gerushin, all of these things devolve from the fact that these concepts exist in the higher worlds. That there is the marriage between Hashem and Klal Yisrael, a marriage which began by Matan Torah. Matan Torah, after all, Kafa Aleim Har Kigigis. We know one of the ideas, Kafa Aleim Har Kigigis, that Hashem picked the mountain over our head, that was our chuppah. And at that time, Yom Chasunasai, the day of Hashem's marriage is Matan Torah, and this it's an extended state of kiddushin, of betrothal, and the nisuin will be Mirtz Hashem very soon when Mashiach comes. When the pasuk says regarding when Mashiach comes, Ki Bayalayich Isayich. These two elements of marriage, the way it is down over here, the positive element and the negative element also exist in our relationship with Hashem. There's the kesef, obviously. Kesef meaning the ava, the love that we have for Hashem, our relationship. our positive relationship we have with Hashem. That's one side of the coin of our marriage to Hashem. But there's another side of the coin. The other side of the coin is, I don't remember which one it is, but one of the recent Haftarahs, I believe, before Tisha B'Av, and one of the Tlasa de Parunusa, where the Navi talks about how we kept on, although that we're married to Hashem, we kept on going off after we were unfaithful to Hashem. I kept on going off after other men. You recall this Haftarah? The Navi describes it very graphically. How we were constantly, as a nation, we're constantly philandering and we're not being faithful to Hashem. The other part of our marriage to Hashem is not only that we're married to Him with all the wonderful things that come along with that relationship, but also that the marriage entails the asala kul yamaka hektish, that we don't have anyone else. And that we sever our ties to everything else. Our allegiance, our desire, and our love is reserved for Hashem Himself. In the words of the Chovos HaLevavos, the way the Chovos HaLevavos puts this, he says that just like you can't expect fire and water to coexist in a vessel, take a pot, try putting in fire and try putting in water and seeing how that works out. It's not going to work. Either the water is going to extinguish the fire, or the fire, if it's strong enough, will evaporate the water. But fire and water can't coexist. He says the same thing is also Avas Hashem, the love for Hashem, and the Avas HaTanugim, our love for pleasures here in this world, also can't coexist. One of them will always come at the expense of the other. So a full devotion and love for and connection with and relationship with Hashem is contingent upon us severing our ties with all our other all of our other interests, and the extent of our love will be the extent of our divorcing ourselves and divesting ourselves from the pleasures of life, and vice versa. So therefore, in our relationship with Hashem also we have these two elements. But suddenly now the question of which one comes first becomes very relevant. Which one comes first? Do I first develop a love for Hashem, which causes me to lose interest in all the matters of this world? Or do I first have to work on divorcing myself from my desires of this world in order to be able to develop and foster a connection with my marriage and relationship with Hashem? So suddenly the question that we had theoretically before, which comes first, and you're wondering who cares, so actually there are halachic implications of that also. But if you move the conversation beyond the physical and you move it to the spiritual source of it, suddenly we find it very relevant to our lives. What is my avodah? Is my avodah to sit and to try to develop my avas Hashem? And I should know that the stronger my avas Hashem becomes, automatically the weaker will become any connection that I have with Inyanim and Olam Haza. Or is my avodah, no, my avodah is to actively work on weakening my connection with all the pleasures of this world, which will then allow me to connect to Hashem. Now that's a practical question. I would say that what perhaps makes the Rebbe's Torah unique more than any other area is the Rebbe constantly does this. The Rebbe will say an entire Sikha expounding a piece of Gemara or a Rambam and bringing in the Ragat Shofar and many other such Iggeres. And after speaking about that for half an hour and a half, the Rebbe will then turn around and explain everything that he just said. But the way it is, Beruch Nisanyanim. What does that mean in terms of our Avodas Hashem? What does that mean in the spiritual worlds? What does that all mean? And I don't know if there is, obviously throughout the generations we had many great Go'inim and people who had incredible Chidushim and the Gemara and the Rambam, etc. And you had big Mukubalim. But the combination of the two, a Pashat going and exploring a Sugya with the Rishonim and with the Achronim, and then explaining how every single one of these opinions, what does that mean, and what is all these implications, how are they reflected above, that is something which is definitely a uniqueness of the Rebbe. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the Ragat Shofar says that if you look in the Gemara and Halacha, you can find indications either way, which one comes first. And the reason for this is because, B'pnimi Yisenyan, spiritually speaking, You can make an argument for either case. The usual argument, we might want to say the standard avodah, is we say sur meira v'asei toiv. What does sur meira v'asei toiv imply? The first thing is the asei toiv is the positive, right? The sur meira is the negative. We start off with the negative. The first thing is you want to have a relationship with Hashem, you got to cease and desist and divest yourself from Ra. And what does Ra mean? Ra means all the pleasures of this world. They're all Ra. They're all, what does Ra mean? They're all bad. They're bad for our relationship with Hashem. It's like imagine someone who has high blood pressure. They say, oh, salt is bad for you. What is salt? Is salt bad? Is salt a serial murderer, a bank robber? What makes salt bad? No, but it's bad for you, right? Sur meira, the same thing is also, what is Ra? Ra doesn't mean necessarily, criminal, horrible, evil acts, but sur meira means all olam hazeh for a yid who's trying to develop his or her relationship with Hashem. Tanugi Elam Hazeh represents Ra. So the standard argument is sur meira, and then vasei toiv, then you'll be able to engage in the ultimate toiv being a connection with a relationship to Hashem. However, and different other places, and many places the Rebbe spoke about this, practically speaking, sometimes a yid has to go the other way around. Which is you have to start with the asei toiv, you have to start with developing your relationship with Hashem, and the sur meira will follow. I think I've mentioned this in the past. One of my favorite Werther lines that I've heard said in the names of the Kotzker Rebbe. The Kotzker Rebbe Nachum Mendel of Kotsk, he once said that I want that my Hasidim, they shouldn't do any Averis, not because they're not allowed to do Averis, but because they don't have any time to do Averis. That's what he said. Talk about a positive approach. How does a Yid have time to do Averis? Forget about that the Torah says you're not allowed to do it. Where's the time? A Yid who's busy serving the Eibishter and doing what he has to do, and learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, doesn't have time for Averis. So the Kotzker Rebbe said, my ideal chassid is someone who doesn't do Averis, not because Torah says I'm not allowed to, Shulchan Aruch says not allowed to, but because he simply does not have the time for it. And to borrow that idea and to paraphrase that idea, a person cannot have a desire for Elam Hazeh because he doesn't have time or place for it, because he's so consumed with his Avos Hashem that nothing else, right? And that is definitely the way that throughout the Sichos the Rebbe endorsed. The Rebbe says, stop, don't worry so much about the negative. Don't worry so much about the Averis, about Tanugi Elam Hazeh. Me'at oir, the Rebbe would say so many times, Me'at oir doicha har b'choshech. A little light dispels a lot of darkness. And as the Rebbe would so often say, V'al achas kama v'kama, and how much more so har b'oir. If a little oir pushes away so much darkness, how much more so if you add a lot of light? There's darkness in your life. So one way to deal with it is to go fight the darkness. Another way to do it is light some candles, learn more Torah, do more mitzvahs, instead of going, and in Yiddish they say gribbling with, you might say wrestling with the darkness and wrestling with the mud. Instead, light more candles. Light up your life with more Torah, with more mitzvahs, with more avodas Hashem, with more davening, and the other stuff will fall by the wayside. Why is this relevant to what we've been learning about the last few weeks in Siman Yud Aleph? Sheldon, you see the connections that we're talking about over here?
Do you see the light?
No, Sheldon sees it because Sheldon was bothered a little by, and I think what I'm saying gives a little perspective to what we're talking about. The Alter Rebbe here is taking a very radical stance. The Rebbe is saying that the way ideally that a Yid lives is in a way of batel ritzoncha, in a way that he doesn't have a ratzon, and his ratzon is Hashem's ratzon, and therefore Nothing bothers him, and Banei, Chai, Mizayne. We're not talking about the fact that he doesn't have a Cadillac. We're talking about even the basics of life. Why? Because a Yid is so single-mindedly focused on his relationship with Hashem, and this world doesn't mean anything to him. And moreover, add that with the twin idea. In other words, there are two huge ideas, two big ideas that Alter Rebbe sets forth over here in this siman. Number one is that a Yid be'etzem, this world isn't his place. It's not, everything in the world is not really important to him. Why? Because something else is important. Hashem is important. You can't live without a God. The question is, who's your God? Right? That's you can't live without a focus, without a drive. For most of us, it's Olam Hazeh. But for a Yid, the way a Yid is ideally, no. His life, his fire, his energy, his enthusiasm, everything is about Hashem. This world doesn't matter too much. And when things go bad, coupled with the fact that the world is not really so significant to him, there is that absolute knowledge that everything that comes from Hashem is good, because Hashem is the Yosher Bereshis, and every moment Hashem is creating the world from nothingness. So everything is amazing, and this whole world anyways is not my goal. My goal is my relationship with Hashem, and that's the ideal Yid, and therefore he approaches everything, and everything is, in the words of the Alter Rebbe, Hein Valav Shavin Etzla, yes or no, I have $1 million in the bank, or I owe $1 million, and tomorrow they're coming to take my house away from me. It's all the same thing. Why? Because this world doesn't matter, and everything that happens is from Hashem, and everything that happens is good. And Sheldon again is smiling. He's like, how, what, when? If you're approaching it from the negative side, from the negative end, how do I sever my attachments to this world? I know what I like. I know what I want. I like a good cholent on Shabbos. I like a comfortable bed on Shabbos afternoon after the cholent. I have my family. I have my job. I like my creature comforts. And you're telling me now that all these things shouldn't matter to me? That almost seems to be impossible. But what if we approach it the different way? Instead of the Asher La Kul Yamaka Hektish, instead of saying the whole world, if you want a relationship with Hashem, you have to sever your ties with the world, to say, this is the natural result of a relationship with Hashem. You're not there yet, that means that your relationship with Hashem needs more work. You need to invest more time in your relationship with Hashem, in your davening, in your learning, in your hisbonenus, in all of these things. And then what's going to happen is automatically, slowly but surely, this is going to happen. Now, to be clear, we're not talking, as I've said this many, many times.
Good, Kazal.
I've said many times that one of the Yitzharas, I think, definitely one of his best tricks, if not his best trick, is the all or nothing game.
It's what?
The all or nothing game.
All or nothing.
The Yitzhara looks at a certain goal and says, I can't accomplish it completely and to its entirety, so why bother even starting?
To begin with.
Right?
You're not going to get rid of all your time.
That's the Yitzhara, that's the Nafsh Bahamis. Why? Because the Yitzhara Nafsh Bahamis is not there to serve Hashem. It's there to add, it likes diplomas, it likes medals, it likes titles, And if it doesn't feel that it can fully achieve a certain darga or a certain level, why bother even starting? But that's only because of the self-interest. So if I don't feel I can do it to completion, I'm not going to start. The Nefesh Elokis says, I'm here. Okay, the ideal is over here. So I have to start serving Hashem. And as we learned in Pirkei Avos, will I ever get to the end? I don't know. But one thing I do know is that that's what Hashem wants me to do. That's my Avodas Hashem. The Nefesh Bahamis looks at the end result and says, I'll never get there. I'm not starting because I'm looking for accomplishments. I'm looking for, as they say, notches on my belt. And if I'm not going to be able to ever put that down as a full notch in my belt, as Dr. Rebbe adds in the words, if you remember, we learned last week, right? I'm striving for a goal which I'll never fully attain. Why bother? So I may as well just stay where I am right now and enjoy my creature comforts. But the actual case says, no, I have to serve Hashem. So I have to invest in my relationship with Hashem. Now what's going to happen? It's like a scale. As your relationship with Hashem goes up, your relationship with Olam Hazeh is going to go down. And by the way, it works the other way also, Rahman al-Istan, right? Now, you're going to say, I'll never get all the way there to the top, so that my relationship with Hashem is 100, and my relationship with this world is a 0, which is what Dr. Rebbe is describing in the Perek. Okay, that's fine, but where are you right now? If right now your relationship with Hashem with a 10, and the relationship with the Olam Hazeh is a 90, because they correspond to each other, move it. Move it. Make it a 12 and an 82. And then maybe afterwards you'll move it more. Will you ever get to the top? It doesn't make a difference. Our avodah as Yidden is to move that balance. And as Alter Rebbe says in this Perek, that's not only our avodah, but that's the reason why we were created. The reason why we're created is to change our priorities in the most fundamental way. We come down here in the world, and naturally, our Nefesh Bahamas, our Yetzer Hara gets a 13-year head start over the Nefesh Elokis. For the ladies listening in, they're a little better off. Their Nefesh Bahamas only has a 12-year head start, so they're a year ahead of us, of the men over here. But Al Kapanim, and in those 12 years or those 13 years, we've developed a very, very healthy attraction to Olam Hazeh. We're starting behind on the game, and the natural thing that's where our connections are, and our avodah as Yidden is to move. Is to change that balance, slowly but surely to change that balance, and ultimately reaching the point where we stop being the Erev Rav, where it's all, the Erev Rav is where, as Alter Rebbe says, thinking about ourselves, only about ourselves, and the apex of that is Taka, where a person is able to arrive at the level of Hein V'Lav Shavin. The whole Olam Hazeh is an onion peel. It's nothing. It's all about a relationship with Hashem, and with the absolute amunah and understanding that everything happens from Hashem at every single moment, and therefore everything is absolutely good. I'm going to have to give this another try if you're still not happy.
There is an entity of bad, though. I mean, it says Sumi Rava Say Tov. So that means there is something that's
right.
bad.
Bad is something which goes against Hashem, and Avera is bad, objectively.
But when time you're doing good, you're not able to
There
do
is
Without-
such a thing as bad.
I know that when Dr. Rebbe says,
Right,
right, Dr. Rebbe is not countering that. Dr. Rebbe is saying there is no bad when he's talking about Yisurim. That in terms of that which happens to us, that which everything is created by Hashem and orchestrated by Hashem. There's nothing bad that happens to us. Ein ra yired malamayla, but yeah, we have the ability to do averos. That's true, and that is bad. Now, in terms of the perspective that Alter Rebbe is giving us over here about Yisurim, about suffering, and the words of the Alter Rebbe says, "Aval amaymin lo yachush mishum davar, mishum amaymin lo yachush mishum yisurim ba'olam." The believer is not perturbed by any suffering in the world. B'chol inyani ha'olam hein v'lav shavin etzlei b'ashva amitis. In all worldly matters, yes and no is the same thing, absolutely the same. Note Dr. Rebbe says, "V'chol inyani ha'olam," all worldly things. We're not talking here about mitzvahs versus averas. A mitzvah is not the same as an avera. Chas v'shalom. A mitzvah is the ultimate good, and an avera is the ultimate bad. But v'chol inyani ha'olam. So I need to clarify. I think this might have been brought up in questions in the past few weeks. This does not preclude the fact that at times circumstances are very painful and we feel pain, and that pain is undeniable. But pain is not synonymous with bad. Pain and bad are not the same thing. Pain and evil are not the same thing. This week, I sent off 2 of my sons to yeshiva. One of them I sent off to France. And then 2 days later, I sent off my youngest son to yeshiva in Chicago.
Your brother.
Yeah. And it was painful. It was painful sending off the youngest one off to yeshiva. And it's not easy. But does that mean that it's bad? I knew a long time ago. I told my wife about this 10 years ago, 15 years ago, even before this kid was born. The boys, as soon as they reach of age, we ship them out of the house. You don't become a bacher, you don't learn Torah at home. It doesn't work that way. The only way to become an emissary ben Torah, Talmud Chacham, is you have to leave home. There's a word, Veheim la yadu derachai. In the heim, in the house, la yadu derachai.
The officer, Geheim.
I hear.
That's it, though.
Ein Meshivin ala drush.
That's to the top.
My father would used to say that.
The what?
To the top.
Geheim Chayayni.
Right. Okay, this can stira. I think
I have to agree with you.
it depends on the stage in life. Our life we get from our home. That's in the foundational years, the first years, in the first 12, 13, 14 years. But then ultimately, to reach the next stage, you can't do it at home. You can't do it while eating your mother's kugel. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You have to go off, and you have to do things that your mother won't approve of, such as staying up late and learning and sleeping for not sleeping so much, not eating. So the only way to you're not gonna get that at home, where you're spoiled to a greater degree by your mother and to a smaller degree by your father also. You have to go away. So this is a tremendous step that he left home and went off to yeshiva. A tremendous step in his growth, and I'm very, very happy for him. And at the same time, it hurts a lot. It's painful.
Why is it painful?
Sorry?
Why is it painful?
Sending off a kid to yeshiva is
We're
painful.
going to see him every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the good outweighs the.
But you have both.
You can't have both.
Yeah.
But some painfuls are more painful than other painfuls.
What?
In other words, somebody who lost a family member in Florida, that's going to be very painful. It's not sending a kid to yeshiva in Chicago where you can come back home in a few hours. It's you lose somebody. That's pain. So I don't know. Are you talking about the same pains? You talk pain in a generic way or pain specific?
But you just said pain is not bad. How would you?
Some pains are bad. I think some pains are bad.
A loss of.
I didn't disagree. I didn't say no pain can be bad. All I said was that pain is not necessarily synonymous with bad. Just because the situation is painful doesn't mean that it's bad. When a person goes in for a chves, let's say someone has a condition, let's say a person has scoliosis, and they need to go for a medical treatment, for an operation. I had a sister who underwent that. And you can be for a few months, it's incredible pain. But that's not bad, that's actually good. But it's painful. Pain and bad, again, pain and something and bad do not necessarily go hand in hand. You could have something which is painful and it's good. People who are training for a marathon, they endure a lot of pain and sore muscles and everything, and if you'll speak to them, they'll say that it's tremendous experience, but it's painful.
A woman giving birth.
Yeah, a woman giving
Painful,
birth is
right?
painful, but it's not bad.
Happiness.
No pain.
Sorry, what were you saying? I missed you.
Oh, I said I'm going to yeshiva.
Oh, very nice. Where?
Morristown.
Nice. When are you going?
Sunday.
Should be with a lot of hatzlacha.
He was in St. Louis.
Then I'll
He
come
was-
back in 4 weeks.
Right. My older son was in Morristown this past year.
I can help you.
Where? Tom Pitt-Mimim? At Terrace?
In time Chetimim, yeah.
Oh,
You're going to Tiferes.
at Terrace.
At Terrace, it's a third program.
It's one into Ferris. It's a subdivision.
Okay. Anyways, the main thing is it should be with a lot of
I'm
hatzlacha.
best friends with the cook. That helps you.
That's the best connection that you can have is the cook.
Got you, right?
One thing is to know the Rosh Yeshiva, but even better is to know the cook.
It's more important. You know the cook there?
I don't know. Basis.
He's the best.
Done. Okay.
Anyways,
Tell Rabbi Rabinovich.
That's it.
You mean Kamach and Torah?
And say, do you know Rabbi Rabinowitz from
He,
Midwood?
no, he knows.
What's your first name?
we'll talk. Continue afterwards.
After.
So,
So what do you want to bring out with this, with the pain?
we're getting there.
Pain and gain.
We're going to get there.
Slowly but surely.
So when we're saying over here in Siman Yud Aleph that Hamamin lo yachush mishum yisurin ba'elam, that the believer is not perturbed by any suffering in the world, it doesn't mean that the believer does not feel pain. It doesn't mean that. Sometimes the situation can be very painful. But what makes pain really unbearable? When does pain become bad?
When you can't manage it.
You don't think.
Feel it in your body.
No, sometimes you can feel pain in your body. It's not a bad thing.
It becomes disabling.
They say the muscle about the doctor who pricks the patient with a needle, and the patient, that hurts. Why do you do that to me? And the doctor's a big smile on his face. Why are you smiling? He says, I've done that every single day for the last 5 months, and you didn't feel it. Today's the first day that you're feeling it.
That's good.
Right? Pain doesn't have to be, even physical pain could be sometimes for a good thing. Pain becomes a bad thing when a person feels that it's unjustified and that it doesn't lead, it's not inherently good, or it doesn't lead to a
Good conclusion.
right? You know, there's a pain in the neck that we all do every single day. We wake up in the morning, we brush our teeth. Before we go to sleep at night, we brush our teeth. How much is that? Is it a pain? Maybe it's already part of your routine. Maybe.
Depends on what condition your teeth are in.
What?
Depends on what condition your teeth are in.
Okay, what I'm saying is, but imagine if there were no benefit to it, but you were forced to do it. You had a taskmaster who every morning forced you to take 2 minutes in the morning to take a brush and to run it all over your teeth, and at night also. You would become very resentful of that if there was no benefit whatsoever, and you're doing it just because you had to. So what changed? What changed is that when there's a benefit in something, when you know there's a reason, when you know that it's good, then the pain isn't bad anymore. The pain is still painful, but the pain isn't bad.
It's tolerable.
Sorry?
Tolerable.
Yeah. You know, imagine you fly to Eretz Yisrael. Now, anyone who flies, I was just there, right? So you fly, it's 10 hours one way and 12 hours the other way. Flying is a pain. I do not like flying. But it's tolerable. Why? Because I'm going to Eretz Yisrael. But let's say I had a flight from here to Washington, D.C. And we got delayed in the air, and I was 12 hours in the plane. I'd walk out of the plane, what would I be feeling like? It's the same pain, the same 12 hours in the plane, but what would I be feeling like? Why? Because there was no benefit there was no point in it. When pain is purposeless, that's when pain becomes unbearable. Using the example that you gave before. Talking to you.
David.
He isn't here.
I know, no, he's on the phone.
No, he has a hearing aid.
Using the example that I gave before, the people who lost loved ones in the collapse of the Florida building, their pain is incredible, much more so than people who die in other ways. And why is that? Because they feel it was totally purposeless. It shouldn't have happened, couldn't have happened. It doesn't happen to 99.99% of the people. Why is Hashem picking on me? The more you feel that a pain is unjustified, the more it becomes bad. When you realize that pain is justified, then it's just good. And we do that all the time. On a daily basis, we endure different pains willingly. We willingly subject ourselves to different pains because we know that it's good. Pain becomes bad when we don't know that it's good, when we think it's random and when we think it's unjustified. Verstehst, Ruben?
Sure.
If you believe in Hashem, if I believe in Hashem, if we believe that everything comes from above, and everything comes from the Ayin, the Chokhmah of Hashem, which is the Makar, the source of all pleasure and all good and everything. What that does, it doesn't take away the pain, but what it does do is,
It's your purpose to.
it makes you understand that whatever pain you're enduring, whatever pain you're undergoing,
It's for good.
it is good. It's coming directly from Hashem, and Hashem is the ultimate good. And that is the larger understanding of a believer. When we talk about Amamin, a believer feels pain. You know, when when someone passes away, someone who's near and dear passes away, so Torah doesn't say go dance, because Gamzula Torah, Torah doesn't say that. Torah also doesn't say if you want you can go cry. Torah says you have to cry. You have to cry now for 3 days. And then another 3 days after that, another 4 days after that. you still need to process the pain.
Then another 30 days after.
Right, and then another, and for the 12 months, that's a whole, all these stages. And to understand that in this way, we're much more strict than the whole world. You have people in the world, the chveis, a sibling passes away, a parent passes away, 4 days, I don't know, probably 4 days later, 3 days later, they're back at their desk. And the Torah says, no such thing. There's no such thing. You have to actually feel the pain and process, because if you don't feel it now, and now what's going to happen is you're not processing it in a healthy way, and it's going to continue. You're repressing it. It's going to fester. But why are we supposed to cry? If the first thing a person says upon when a loved one passes away is Baruch Dein Emes, and then we say Tziduk Adin, Baruch Dein Emes, but the Hashem is the true judge. Whatever he does is the right thing. And Tziduk Adin, right? Hatzur Tamim Pa'alik Chol Deracham Mishpat Hashem. Everything is good. I have no tightness, I have no tightness in you. Not only have no tightness in you, Baruch At Hashem, I bless you. So why are we sad? And if everything, we should be dancing. The answer is because Torah acknowledges the reality of pain. And when someone, chas v'shalom, passes away, for those who are near and dear to that person, it's incredibly painful. But the pain does not equal bad. At no time do we turn to Hashem and say, this was bad. We never turn to Hashem and say, Lama Hariyesa, why did you do bad? Hashem doesn't do bad. Moshe tried that once. Why? I said, Lama Hariyesa, and he got quickly knocked down by Hashem, he got punished. We acknowledge and we recognize and we repeat it again and again. At the Levaya, you're doing what? Everything Hashem you do is perfect, is right, is chesed. The only thing that comes from Hashem, everything is chesed. Sometimes it's chesed that's revealed, and sometimes it's chesed that's hidden. And if it's chesed that's hidden, it could hurt. It could hurt so much. But even when it hurts so much, we still retain our simchas hachayim. We still retain our emunah, knowing that it's all for the good. It hurts, but it's for the good. Not only it's for the good, it is good. Just like all the examples that we gave over here. Something can be painful, but ultimately it's a good thing. And we recognize that if it's from Hashem, it's good. As we said last week, as is when Chalila nicht is oichedu, right? If things aren't good, it's also you on as is do is the good. Whatever is from Hashem is good. Yeah.
Yeah, tell him it says Lama Zavtani.
And what else does it say in Tehillim? Gam ki eilach begeitz al maves le'ira ra. Ki ata imadi. Yeah. But what you're bringing is a different question to bring to the fore, which is why do we daven for different outcomes, which was obviously what David HaMelech was davening. If we trust Hashem, everything but Hashem is amazing, why do we even bother davening? And that's a great question, which maybe we will not get to today.
Rabbi, I have a person in Boston that I'm Mekariv, and I call them every week, speak to him. So I told him a sentence that he always repeated. I told him one time, Hayatov, Achshavtov, Ve'yetov. And I explained to him what it is. Nothing bad. And he always repeats, everybody is saying.
Yeah. That's the Jewish attitude. Why? Because everything is from Hashem. And what's our avodah? Our avodah, even while we're feeling pain, is to be mechazek our emunah and think deeply into this idea, deeply into the idea of Hashgacha Pratis, deeply into the idea of Yetzer Bereshis. The idea that at every single moment, every single element in the world, every happening, every circumstance, every event is being created from anew by Hashem at this very moment. And therefore everything is amazingly good. And as much pain as I am in right now, we need to be mechazek ourselves and realize it's all good. And anyways, whole ilam haza, my relationship with Hashem is what matters, and that's why the mamin is not perturbed. The believer is not perturbed, not bothered by the yisurim, because although they may be painful, yes, but bad, no. But this is all in terms of how we relate to our own suffering, our own hardships, and our own pain. How about though, when we see other people experiencing pain and hardship and suffering? What is supposed to be our attitude then?
We're a brother, we have to feel the same.
So if another person is feeling pain or suffering or has a loss or something, so I should come to the person and knock him over the head and say, hello, did you hear? In Tanya and Siman Yudalef and Iggeres HaKodesh, it says that Ein Ra Yered Milmayla. There's no such thing as anything bad that comes on from heaven. And Hashem, the Yetzer Bereshis, is creating this circumstance at every single moment. And therefore, your job is to know that less asar panimine, there's no place that's devoid from Hashem, and therefore you have to be happy, and you should know that if you complain or if you're sad, then you are like a kofer chas v'shalom. Direct from Siman Yudalef and Iggeres HaKodesh. Is that what our message is supposed to be towards anyone who's undergoing a painful circumstance?
How do you say that?
So everyone is, you're rolling your eyes at me like, of course not, but why not? If this is the truth, it's true for me, and it's true for everyone else also. When I see another person is in a painful situation, is that not hashgacha pratis? Is it not really good? Is Hashem only good to me but bad to him? Imagine that. When I'm undergoing suffering, chas v'shalom, I'm supposed to say, Hashem is only good to me. But if I see him suffering, to me Hashem is good, but to him maybe Hashem is bad. That's ridiculous. And the answer to this is yes, of course. Everything that Hashem does is good. For me, for you, and for everyone. There is no exception to that rule. But, exactly. But at the same time, in every single circumstance, the question that I have to ask myself at that moment is, what is my avodah over here right now? What is my avodah? So let's say if I had to undergo chas v'shalom a painful medical procedure, what would be my avodah? My avodah obviously would be that's definitely part of my avodah is daven to Hashem. But in terms of my perspective, my avodah is to be mechazik my emunah, to strengthen my emunah, to realize that whatever it is, it's good, it's from Hashem, and it's from Hashem, it's good, and even though it's painful, Taka, it's good, and to try to move on and to push on.
Take the fame gracefully.
Yeah. But let's say they have a child who's undergoing a medical procedure. Now, the medical procedure is for the good of the child, right? And imagine the father goes to the kid, and the kid is crying because it's painful. And the father says to the kid, "Why are you crying? It's good for you. It's good, it's good. These doctors, they're not evil people. They're not mean people who are trying to hurt you. They're there to, yeah, it's painful. Man up. It's good for you. Don't be upset." No.
Get your Father of the Year.
Sorry, you're not going to get Father of the Year award for that. What is the job of a father? The job of a father is to feel the pain of the child. I wouldn't even say it's the job of the father. I would say, like, if the father doesn't feel the pain, there's something defective about the father. And what is the avodah of the father? Is to comfort the child. It's to hold the child, to hug the child, to try in whichever way possible to take away the pain. So what do we see over here? Although, again, if the father is undergoing the procedure, or the child is undergoing the procedure, the truth is, the underlying truth in both instances is that it's good. The procedure is good. It's painful and it's good. That is the truth for the father if he's undergoing that procedure, and that is the truth for the child. However, when it is happening to the father, his avodah is to strengthen himself and to resolve and to think about how it's ben hashamayim and it's toiv. But if it's happening to his child, his avodah is not to go and justify it, even though it is good. His avodah is to feel the pain, to cry with the child, and do whatever he can to try to make the child's life just a little more bearable and the pain a little less. When we see another yid who's in pain, we have no sfekes b'munah, we have no doubts that it's from Hashem, and if it's from Hashem, it's good. But when we see another yid in pain, what's our avodah? Our avodah isn't here to start thinking and speaking about how it's good. Our avodah right now is, the Avos Yisrael is, there is pain going on, legitimate pain. Again, not badness, there is pain going on. And our avodah is to be there for the person, to sympathize, to empathize, and to help that person in whichever way possible. This is a very big difference in the way we react when we ourselves are undergoing suffering. In which case, then we have to learn Siman Yud Aleph in the Iggeres HaKodesh and learn it very well. And when someone else is feeling the suffering. But I want to conclude with another story about the same chassid who I said a story about last week. If you remember last week, I said a story about Rabbi Mendel Futterfass. And how he lost a daughter in a car accident. And by the Levaya, he was heard speaking to himself about Laskil Chabina, saying, Rabbi Mendel, why isn't Laskil, where's your Laskil Chabina? Why isn't it having an impact on you? So there's this Rabbi Mendel, who, by the way, started off with many children. He was only left with 2 at the end, and of those 2, one of them was killed in the car crash. But he eventually he went off to Kfar Chabad, and I heard the story from someone who was present at the story. There was another chassid, and I know the name of the chassid. It's not necessary to say the name, but there was a chassid who lost a daughter, and much time had passed since he had lost his daughter. A few years had passed. And he had not returned to himself. He was still in mourning. He was still grieving. He was a different person. He had lost his joy in life. And it happened once that Rabbi Mendel Futterfass was sitting next to this chassid by a simcha, and this chassid was sitting there. Limply, lamely, as mentioned, he was sapped of his energy, his desire to live. And Rabbi Mendel turns to him, and he gave him a big hug. And Rabbi Mendel, with tears streaming down his face, as only someone who understood this other chassid, because Rabbi Mendel himself again had lost many children. He told him. He said Ramonia, that was his first name. I said Ramonia. He says, to demand of you Siman Yud Aleph in Iggeres HaKodesh, Laskil Chabina, right when the tragedy happens, I understand that's impossible. But it's a few years later. A few years later, everyone can do Laskil Chabina. It's time to learn Laskil Chabina and to take it to heart. And Rabbi Mendel said this, as mentioned, with tears flowing down his cheeks, with the emes of love, with the emes of Avos Yisrael. And I think the message from this story is that, there is a time when a person is undergoing hardship. There's a time when we just have to be quiet, and we have to support, and we have to show our love and our empathy, and we have to be there to help them in whichever way possible and to lighten the pain. However, at a certain point in time, if a person is not able to successfully pull themselves out of that situation, sometimes it does require a friend. But it takes a lot of chachma and a lot of empathy and a lot of it cannot be done in a preachy way or in a holier than thou way. But a emes, a good friend, a emes, a good friend, a real good friend, to go and say, hello, it's time for some Siman Yud Aleph. Maybe when you're in the throes of the tragedy, the throes of the hardship, to go and say, Ein ra yirim l'mayla, nothing bad comes from heaven. Maybe for the average person it's something which is a Herculean task, which is beyond our abilities. But at a certain point in time, especially when we have enough time in hindsight, we have to learn this perek. We have to get the chizuk that we get from it, and realize that Hashem is good, and Hashem is creating everything at every moment, and therefore everything that He does ultimately is the ultimate toif.